So we want to get started. Laura, do you want to start?
There is. She's holding out. Back to Mississippi.
We're going to get started. We're scheduled for a break about 10 after 3. So we want to hear from everybody like we did this morning. If someone from each table can come up and just share with us what your table came to. And Laura is going to start.
Well, we were all enthralled with the video and we really wanted more. We wanted instructions on what we can do at first. And then throughout the discussion, we thought about being patient with ourselves and we need to honor the past. We talked a lot about midwifing the future, and it was interesting about, we were touched by the hospice, the death of the old system, and that we need to think about honor the past while we're doing that. And maybe hospicing means letting it die well. Maybe we let the system die and help it die in a good way. And then at the same time, midwifing the future. We also realize that we can't do everything, but maybe each of us can do something. And we can look for the commonalities. Maybe there's some common thing that we can all agree on. The love of God, the love of Christ. We can all agree on that and move toward the Lord that way.
Okay, we talked a lot. I'm not going to give you all of that. But I guess one of the things we've noticed was that she focused on one goal. You know, she went from hunger to looking at Mother Earth. And her moment of transformation, she took that moment and that was it. She changed over. And how important that was, that idea, because even though we can't do the traveling, we may not have the time, resources, etc., but when she comes back and gives this idea to everyone, that's where we need to stand up and we need to act. So, so even though you may not be able to be Lynn, you are part of her success, because she can't be successful without us sharing this information. Another thing is, yes, we can recycle, we can compost, we can do all of that, but by us sharing with two other people that we do this, that kind of snowballs, and that gives them the thought that, oh, she can do it, I can do it, or, you know, take the limbs or take the log and make it into a table or something, so you recycle everything that you have, or as much as you can. So that's pretty much.
We talked about just a few things. One big thing was we like the change the dream. Ultimately, that if we all can't change our dream, we can't get there. The idea of just the phrase that we use, I can't imagine that, or I just can't see it. If you talk to somebody, I just can't see it. We felt like if we can't learn to see things or imagine them, we can't get there. Talked about living each day, making conscious choices in terms of stewarding the earth. And we talked about the justice practices, how proud we are about the environmental decisions that the community has made, the sisters have made, especially here at the Mother House with, napkins, just doing every perfect green thing that you can do. And I understand there used to be a committee that wrote something in the PNN, Earth, what was it? Earth Kinship. And, but I think I'd like to see it go beyond that. So Earth Kinship, when you've got a committee, I think people can look at it and go, oh, it's those environmental people. And I'd like to see that as associates that we could embrace one or two environmental changes that the community as a bigger whole has done, and then commit that for the year and then come back and see how are we doing with that? How are we doing it in our own personal family? We could reinforce that in our community meetings monthly and then try to, by our example, encourage other people to do it. So that, people with young children, it's a different thing to recycle than it is for those of us who are seniors or living alone. So that on a different levels, we could perhaps really take this another step. And finally, we were moved by that comment on moving out of the deep trance.
We could have used quite a bit longer to talk. What we noticed about Lynn's droning was, I guess, first of all, that she was passionate about the people about hunger and then about Earth, which is and what we resonated with is that's very much like our sisters and ourselves. That there's a larger need out there that we go with, we listen to. One of the other things that somebody noticed is that she went to listen and to serve, rather than to listen and to change, or rather than to go and to change, which was a really big thing. And then that also resonated with what we do with the microfinancing and with many of the places that we serve. That's what we do, is we go and listen and see what they need. And we're open to our own pain, and we listen to the pain. And then what do they need and how can we do that? You don't hold the sister of St. Joseph down. Once there's a need, it's like, what are we going to do next? That always happens. And of course, accountability for what's the next step to the more. Somebody mentioned concerns about Earth, concerns about aquifers, concerns about our church, concerns, and her needs we resonated with. And we kept going in, well, what are we going to do? And what can we do? And what's the vision? And of course, we started on that, and we hope that there's more. But there is a larger vision in our sisters in Africa. What we've learned is about being present and listening. That's what part of our vision is, to be present and to listen and then to act. To act about what these people, what we need, what they need. And several people said it starts with ourselves. But what we do together can move, like she said. What we start to do together is what can change the groanings, can change the world, can change the universe. We keep coming at it together. Because that's what moves things, being together. And we need to center our lives around the vision of Jesus. That's what our vision is, presence, the presence of God among us, and moving forward to meet the needs of the community. So I'm sure there was more. More on the table.
Well, Cindy told me that I have been transformed, so now instead of being a nervous speaker, I'm going to be inspirational. Oh, yeah. Okay. that we uncovered was that transformation is really the result of an intentional presence. And that in that presence, we value mutuality of relationships, and that there's a synergy that happens not only when we as individuals make a decision to do something different or to be something different, but when we as a group make that decision to move forward into something different, a commitment to a new consciousness. And so as we look for our own personal niche, and where do we fit and what do we do, we also need to embrace one another in moving toward where do we go and what do we do. Okay, each of us has a gift to bring, and we need to energize that and bring it to the whole. When you talked about, Karen, that collective, deep collective trance, we saw that as kind of a myth, and that we're living a myth in a lot of senses, and we're needing to transform from the myth of more to the truth of more. How do we do that? How do we move from the myth of separateness to the truth of mutuality? And so we also talked about that in the sense of that gentle hospice and midwifing, and all being part of the same process. So in conclusion, to my inspirational speech, then we go to the nerves. In conclusion, we determined that all of life is really the pursuit of right relationships and the mutual respect for the dear neighbor. Not only do we serve the dear neighbor, but we need to understand that we are being served by the dear neighbor, that the dear neighbor has something to give to us. It's not just us magnanimously giving something to someone else. We have something to learn from them as well.
It seems like these statements are becoming more like an integration of where we're moving in terms of this transformation. Ours was a process statement, not the specifics on the what. It's 5 bullet points and then 3 statements. And the one is committed and acting on what matters most. That's the notion that she brought. Recognizing the connectedness we have to all people and things. Aligned with our charism of serving the dear neighbor no matter what. Reverencing the preciousness of life, grounded in love. We are a community of people who have embraced the CSJ cares, strengthened by the power of our community, open to birthing new ideas and the passing of the old. It is important as we do so to learn together, to support each other's efforts and to pray together. We focus on what calls us together and not what separates us.
Level that everyone can play a part in transformation, whatever transformation they're trying to make or be a part of. And those individuals have the power to influence other people, which causes a ripple effect. One person tells one person, they tell another person, that kind of thing. And we also discussed it, as I mentioned in the first video, as a web that is kind of infinite. And then we said each person decides on a particular idea or action to start the transformation. So really it's that individual that can really make things happen.
We kind of jumped all over the place too. Thank you, Jared, for giving us the word vision. I think that's what we were trying to talk about at the very beginning. So impressed with the way that she said, I want to end world hunger. it wasn't just, I want to see what I can do to help the hunger, but I want to end world hunger. That this vision of doing something so incredible as that, that she did not end up doing that, but that was her vision. And so maybe what we need to do is make our vision bigger and do more of what we want to do. We also talked about the idea of living in the deep trance. And Cindy gave us the word apathy. And I really think that that's probably the great sin of our society right now is just apathy, just not caring about it. We discussed the word hospicing, and instead of thinking of it just as something that you do when somebody is at the very end of life, but hospicing, supporting people through their later years when they need help, and being a support for the families and so forth. And so the idea is it's sort of a gentle word, hospicing, a way to end something, and that hospicing and midwifing are actually two parts of the same action, because as you're hospicing the old, you're midwifing the new. One of the quotes that really struck me was, "I want to be thoroughly used up when I die." And we talked about how service-oriented careers are not valued in our society because they're not money makers. And so that people who do service, it's kind of considered, well, that's your passion, and so we will do it whether we pay you well or not. It's a problem that we face. And we also talked about doing service, and that we need to serve not from above, saying we have these gifts that we are going to serve you with, but to actually get down as Jesus did at the Last Supper and become one with the people that we serve. I think someone else said it beautifully over here too, Kathy. I think that was in your speech. Being a part of that person or a part of that community, and not just serving. We serve you today and then we go do our own thing, but really becoming serving from the bottom up. That was it.
Gosh, I don't want to follow Marilyn anymore. She's too good at this. But we sure liked Lynn in the video, and I would say we affirmed her passion. One person made the comment how much she liked the fact that she allowed circumstances to rearrange her life, and that takes a lot of trust to do. We thought the fact that she listened and how open she was to the people. One person in our group stated that young people in her community are unaware of this information, like we learned this afternoon. And her dream personally is to share this with her community. The act of hospicing the old, I think we've all mentioned that. I'm a hospice volunteer, so it means a lot to me, because I think hospicing also means validating the old, and I think that's really going to be important to us as we move along, and of course joyfully midwifing in the future. Go home and change the dream. And one of the people in our group mentioned that she feels there's a movement of back to basics, and that maybe this is one of the things we're being called toward, a simplicity of lifestyle. And do you know your liberation is bound up with ours? That quote meant a lot to our group. Thank you.
Our group really got caught up in what Lynn was saying, and that transforming the dream and what it means. And many of you already expressed it, letting go. And we all know this in our lived experience as men and women. What does it mean to let go? And what evolves from that, and much of that what Peggy just spoke of. And we spoke of and we shared some of the experiences as associates and sisters that are very varied. And like Lynn learned from the people in that country, we can learn from one another. With the ministries and works that some of us have never, ever, ever, ever been a part of. And how we can expand. And then what we talked about as a group was, okay, what is it that brings us together today? Years ago, ministry, yes. But I heard this one from sisters and associates. Spirituality. We're hungry. Our lay brothers and sisters out in the workplace are the same way. They're hungry. Where do I find it? Where do I get nourished? Where do I get it? That we can be in communion. And so we talked about, it's like not because I have to do something. Many of you have come not because you have a mission, you have a ministry, you have a profession. And we too as sisters are hungry too. And our spirituality, we wanted to deepen, and we can do that together. We can do that together, and that was what we shared today.
Our group had a nice, fruitful, long discussion about a lot of the same things, so I'm not going to repeat them. We ended up thinking that Lynn was calling us to what God is calling us all to, the more. And so I'm not going to repeat a lot of the things that have been said more eloquently, but there's one thing that hasn't been said that came out of our group. And interesting to me was it was spoken by someone who's a hospice nurse. So we all resonated about, many of the same quotes, hospice, the death of the dying dreams that don't work. But what she shared was when she watched the video, she thought that the rainforest represents the community of the Sisters of St. Joseph. And that it's beautiful and it has unique gifts, and that we as associates are being called to help preserve it. We thought that was beautiful.
As we engaged in the conversation based on these questions, what really emerged was a beingness on everybody in our group. There was a lot of honesty, a lot of openness, and just really a lot of great listening to each other. People really shared from a deep, deep place what lives for them now. Most of our conversation came really not coming up with any concrete ideas, but we spent a lot of time questioning what is the mystery of transformation. Are there layers of transformation? Do we have to all define that? We have to somehow define that in some way to all get in line with that. We can come to a conclusion. Some of the things that spoke to all of us, I think, most especially, were a few of the things that Lynn said. One of them had to do with, and you said, and it really spoke to you, Judy, and it had to do with the fact that both groups were connected, and their liberation was, how the Angkor people's liberation was bound up with the modern world. And when we really step into that, if my liberation is bound to yours, and your liberation is bound to me, first of all, I have to trust that. That's something that brings up, can I trust that even though I know that deeply? And second, what fear does that bring up? That I really am. By being connected to each other and by our liberation being connected to one another, how do we change our dream? And then the other things we all felt like collectively that, wow, all of us could be living a little less modern, right? We've got to make some changes, right? And then we came to the realization of, wow, but changing our dream, changing the way that we perceive things, it's going to take help with each other. Go ahead.
And my standing up here with Tuck is a visual image that it's not because we sisters need help. It's because we all share the same charism because of our baptism. And so it's because of our baptismal charism that we're called to be in this together.
Oh, thank you. Again, that was very rich. And we'll be, again, summarizing and bringing back tomorrow morning and building on this. And so we're going to end this section. Sean's going to share a poem. And then we'll have a break before we start the 3:30. Or maybe 3:35, take the break and come